Here we go. All right, welcome everybody, and let's call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Present.
Mr. Kubicki?
Present.
Ms. Hughes?
Present.
Okay, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next I recommend the approval and signing of the minutes for the regular meeting minutes of July 12, 2022. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Okay, and I make a motion to approve the special meeting minutes of July 20th, 2022. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Okay, now we move on to open forum. Anybody sign into open forum?
That is a good question. Let me grab the sheet. Sorry.
She has it out.
I think it's out front.
Yeah, I think they did take it out front.
Lauren, can I have a sign-in sheet?
This one, I have a couple people in the audience, so.
Sorry. Just that.
It's number one.
Thank you. And I have Jack Fuchs. Did you have a comment for open forum, or did you just sign in?
I signed in.
Okay.
I'd had a little bit of a discussion of plan. And my real questions, I've spoken in some.
And Jack, I know where you live, but just for the sake of everybody else, can you tell everybody what neighborhood and where you live?
Sure, I live in Williams Meadow as part of Columbia Township. On the same street David does, although at the opposite end.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was there is a fund balance of approximately 8 or 9 million. Last year's budget, I call it a budget because it was the resolution passed on December 29 and 21, was about $7 million. And about a seventh of that was used, an additional seventh of that. I understand there's a lot of money in the general fund from which this can be done. And really, I do a lot of money as just simply fungible. Assets are assets. Not talking about TIF money, which we restricted. Even some real estate money can be restricted for purpose. But the general fund is essentially an unrestricted set of funds. And it was used for the purchase of 2 real properties, one of which had been on the market on Cambridge for, at least 2 months since May, until it was decided by the Township to purchase it. And then the other property, which is owned by the same fellow through a separate LLC, was also put in. And I have wondered if there is some plan in place. And correct me if I'm wrong. Was it a purchase price was $1,050,000? Is that correct?
Sounds right.
Yes.
It's hard to tell because you can go onto the recorder's page and go on.
No, it's in the resolution from the last meeting. It's
Okay.
outlined in the resolution.
I hadn't seen that.
You're welcome to have a copy.
Okay. I'm sure it'll show up on the website. So I can look at that. But in some townships, Sycamore, for example, has a development corporation which they operate. Sycamore is also 4 times plus the size of Columbia Township and has a more contiguous footprint. Is there, what's the plan for the use of the 2 properties, one on Cambridge, one on Murray? And were there appraised, that's one question. Second question, I assume there were appraisals obtained. What did the properties appraise for? One was being asked, they were asking 690, that had sat for several months. The other property that wasn't on the market had a tax valuation of about $240,000.
You're talking about a Hamilton County auditor tax dollars?
Yes. Yes, honey. And that may be low, but it's also a property that the business on the first floor had been empty for some period of time. My kids used to make a joke about there being a veterinarian place and a meat store next to each other in that area. And
We
Yeah.
could-
There.
That's true.
I guess that eliminates the deli.
it also dates me some. But the questions are, what did the appraisals show the valuations of the two properties be? That'd be one question. The second question is there a plan for the use development of those properties? And the third is, why was it done in an emergency meeting without putting out some kind of multiple readings so that the community would know how approximately a seventh of the township's money was being spent over what had been budgeted and publicly disclosed, 7+ months earlier.
Okay, and I guess I'll start, and I'll invite Melissa and others to fill in if I miss something here. But first of all, we didn't spend the money. We didn't take a vacation. We didn't give it out for bonuses. We basically converted, we converted a cash asset to a real estate asset that we have an appraisal on that is worth within reason what we paid for it. So we always have the ability to turn it back onto the market. But Jack, as you and I talked on the phone the other day, it is something that when we did the Jed Z originally, and when we did the medical marijuana, which are new sources of revenue, which we're proud of and we talk about in every meeting, which gives us the luxury of having, as you referenced, $8 or $9 million in the bank. The idea is when there's a strategic piece of property in whichever community it comes up, we looked at the property down on Worcester Pike down by your neighborhood. Chip Wood ended up buying it. We didn't want to interfere with that. We also keep an eye on properties in Madison Place. While I would argue those aren't the most strategically impressive properties to the general market, in other words, the general market's not going to come here and put in a great use, but they're strategic to Madison Place as a neighborhood, and we think they're important properties to Columbia Township as a whole. So we look and thought what we'd always planned to do, and it's part of our comprehensive plan, is when those properties became available, and Melissa was tipped off through some of our resources that the one was available, and I knew the property owner behind it but the one on Cambridge was readily available. And the one on Murray, I knew he owned that other property and was going to vacate that. I'd heard that as well. So we thought, well, if we're interested in one, let's go buy them both and see if we can't find a better use of those properties versus a boat dealer, a landscaper that's going to put mulch beds in. Let's go see if we can't team up with Hamilton County Development Company, and I'll let Dustin here talk about some of the other things as well as far as the development possibilities of those sites. But the idea is let's take control of these and see if we can control the use rather than let the general market come in here. I go look at what happens on Worcester Pike in Marymount and think there's some great uses. Marymount Square adds so much value to Marymount. I go think Madison Place is underutilized. I know people could debate the Porsche dealership, but at least it's the most attractive tenant on the even if it's not used by the local community, it's the most attractive landscape, streetscape on Plainville Road. I go look at Worcester Pike when you go back into Fairfax and see lawnscapers. Now I see sweeper shops going in there, and I know some people, I don't want to say too much here, but I know some people were a little disappointed with the use of the new bank building that's going on there, and we thought the best way to go do this is do what we always intended to do, is if there's a strategic property that comes available, we're going after it. And I would make the same argument if those properties on Worcester Pike became available next to 50 West, where there's a lot of mobile homes and other things there. If that property became in the market, there was a way we could take that property and repurpose it. We do the same thing there. We do the same thing if there was a distressed home. and I'm proud of the fact that we have the resources to do it. Our sole purpose in buying those buildings was to improve the quality of life of Madison Place and by proxy all of Columbia Township, hopefully continuing to improve property values, community pride. We go look and go, there's homes right around the corner there that have sold for over $1 million in Madison Place, and we're proud of that, and I think it's exciting. And I think we owe it to the community to try to see what we can do to improve the boutique district that's there. There's some challenges to it. And as I've talked to Melissa, and she's hopefully explained to the other trustees, because real estate is my background, it's what I do for a living. The one building on Murray's a challenge because it's only a 900 square foot footprint, so it's going to be very difficult probably to find a user. It's going to be a unique user. We're going to have to go do what we can to go put them in there. But I don't want it to leave it to chance, and as I said to Melissa, I think we're going to regret if we don't buy those properties versus if we do. And these resources are here because of the decisions that were made by the board, some of the current board members, and some of the former administration. We've got money to go do these things, and it's what we always intended to do with it. And I'm proud of the fact that we were able to go after this quickly. And the reason why we had to have an emergency meeting is because the property owners, when you deal with unique property owners in these small areas, they really love their properties, whether it's somebody selling a house in this market or whatever. They're going to give you a limited time, whether you can inspect it, what you have choices to do. We had 30 days to waive some quick contingencies, get it under contract. We have to get an appraisal before we can close on it. We couldn't even get an appraisal. We had to go beg somebody, which some resources that Melissa and I knew, to try to get an appraisal within 30 days. So until it appraised, we weren't even sure we were going to buy it. If it doesn't appraise, we can't buy it. But it did appraise, and then after that, we had to have an a special meeting to make sure that we could then authorize everybody to buy it. Because if it doesn't appraise, there's no decision to make. If it doesn't, we don't get it in our contract, there's no decision to make. So as we sit here, and I'm spending a few more minutes on it than I usually do with these topics, but I know there wasn't a lot of it out there in the public, but it wasn't, nobody's acting in conflict, nobody's conflicted in judgment, nobody's conflicted in fear. We went after these properties, and I'm proud of this board and this group of people to say, let's do this. We can either sit here and try to go make a difference in Madison Place and make it a unique and special area and die trying, or we can sit here and be afraid we're going to get criticized for it. And I've already had people come in here and say, what are you going to do if it doesn't come? I said, I will sit here and tell everybody I tried. I tried. I went out in front. When I said I tried to convince Melissa, who can convince the other board members and team members, that this is a good decision and a sound decision and an unconflicted decision to improve Madison Place. And I don't want to sit here in 5 years and say, what did you do to improve Madison Place? We got boarded up gas stations, not boarded up gas stations that are underserved, that don't look very good, aren't very, don't have great streetscapes, in my opinion. I'm going to say, you know what, we are trying, we've gone out in front of this, and we've really made some aggressive moves to improve it. And we've done that because of the resources that we've created, the revenue sources that we've created through creativity and dynamics that challenge the whole community, which is, supporting medical marijuana and making revenue sharing deals, doing the Jed Z and stopping some annexations in the way with Marymount Triad annexing and Newtown did. So those were all great decisions, and I'm not afraid to continue to just pound our chest about how great those decisions have come. It gives us the ability to do those things. Go ahead.
I'd like to add something really quick, and then I'm sure others have comments too, but we could have easily let the free market purchase those properties. I sat here not as a trustee, as a resident, as numerous residents were not happy when a private business was acquiring property in a similar fashion and doing things that was not in the best interest of the community. And it was very disruptive in my neighborhood. It really divided the community, and this allows us an opportunity to not let that happen. We now have a little bit of control over those properties. We're going to make sure there's not a hog farm there, make sure there's not a boat dealership there. We can do what's best for the community and what's for the future. In my opinion, we're going to get a lot of feedback from the residents of Madison Place and the rest of the township. Already am. I've talked to probably over a dozen people about the best use of that, what's the best use of that for the community, which is really evolving and becoming an amazing place in the neighborhood. I want to secure that. I'm a resident. I live blocks from there, and so we will get feedback from the residents, including yourself, on the best use of that. And I'm proud of the decisions that were made. I'm not proud of how we, the emergency part of it. That's a lot to your.
I can explain that.
Yes, and Melissa will explain that. That was necessary. That's a lot of money to your point. But I'm very proud of what we did. And a lot of it is because of, we heard from residents like a few years ago. And so I think this was a good reaction to that.
The special meeting is just a meeting that's necessary to make a decision that couldn't be made in the typical meetings. I mean, we have 12 meetings scheduled a year. Occasionally, we schedule special meetings for necessary issues, whether it's purchasing salt because of the snow, et cetera. So I was laughing as I sit there and think, 12 meetings a year, if I could cut it down to 6, I'd prefer it. So special meetings actually impact our schedule negatively, and I say that lightheartedly, but so when we have a special meeting, it is only meant because we had a decision that needed to be made that did not fit into our regular meeting schedule. And if it was up to me, we'd have fewer meetings. Anybody that knows me, from the fire board to the budget meetings we do and everything else, I spent a lot of time in the township, and I don't love to come to meetings, but I will be there. So that said, I'm hoping that answered most of your questions, and I know you and I have chatted quite a bit about this. I'll let Melissa add to whatever she's got to add, but well, first let's ask you, Jack, do you have any follow-up to this?
Yeah, the follow-up really is, what is the plan?
The plan is
And nobody's really saying, this is for anybody's individual benefit. It's
Right.
not a conflict. You and I have had conversations that are different from Brian's conversation about the acquisition by the Porsche dealership of the 4 or 5 properties. You and I talked about whether you wanted me to go and talk to the Tree House to see, to get the approval of the change in the zoning there or not. Now, Brian, you sound like there were people who were opposed to that. There were clearly signs of it some kind. I didn't have a dog in that fight. I still have a dog in that fight. The real question which I have is, what is the plan that you have for the development of the 2 properties that were purchased? Because, as I understand, the township, as you said, could put it back on the market, but to do so, as I read state statute, you'd be limited to an auction process.
I'm not sure about that. I'll defer to others on that, but that said.
And the second
Right.
thing is you can also do ground leases. And that might be what you have in mind for some purpose. But there is one negative that comes out of the township owning these properties. The school districts, I guess their city of Cincinnati School District there,
Correct.
loses about 15 grand or so a year in income.
Well,
Doesn't it?
I don't know, well, I don't know, if we retain the properties and use them for government purposes or for our township purposes, I suppose they wouldn't get the income stream from it. But again, hopefully if we do something great there, it'll improve all the property values, which means it'll be a net positive benefit. Anything we do is only to further enhance the property values that are already going sky high and skyrocketing right now. Again, we look at 2 homes that sold up the street for over $1 million. But Jack, but what I'm getting at is when we make an investment there, to your point, if for some reason one of those properties became, let's say, when we've discussed it, a public parking lot to eliminate some of the impervious surface ratios, which would help with some of the water issues in Madison Place and or green spaces in Madison Place, and or parking issues in Madison Place. I'm not saying it's what we're going to do, but it is on the table, and it is a possibility for one of the sites. Then I suppose, and if the township retained it, then eventually it may go out of the tax rolls. And to your point, it's probably on the taxes for $9 grand or something like that, I believe. So maybe that would diminish to the Cincinnati Public Schools by $4,000 or $5,000. But I believe that the benefit to the community will enhance property values to a much bigger margin than that. And if we continue to watch things go, and if we continue to not be proactive and just sit here and do nothing, again, I think we can do better by being a little more aggressive. Then to go back to what our plan is, we have taken action virtually swiftly to go buy those properties, aggressively to go buy those properties. In addition to that, Dustin's here that's going to talk a little bit about the economic development from Hamilton County Development Company is our economic development, our partner in economic development, so he can talk a little bit about economic development in general. We've also met with a brokerage firm that we're excited about, and we haven't quite hired yet, but it's a great firm that's done a lot of great deals. I was surprised they even were willing to take the listing, but I have a relationship with them as well as Melissa and Dustin. So
And they're excited. Actually.
And even more importantly, more impressively, they have one of their associates there that lives in the area that is really excited about the possibilities. So I think that's probably the biggest reason why they took it on. Otherwise, this is somebody maybe a little more institutional. So they have the professional, they see all deals, but they also have somebody that lives near the local community. And I don't want to announce it yet because we don't have the final signed documents, but
They're one of the top retail real estate firms in the region.
yeah, and they've got a local person that's excited, a young lady that we're excited about, and we're hoping to sign them on and do a podcast to talk and take a deeper dive into all the questions you're asking, and hopefully, I say this very carefully because it's not going to be an easy assignment, and as I've said, giving this to a real estate may just say, you know what, go look at somebody can mine the local community to find a small user that'd be willing to do this. But we're excited about the opportunity. They're excited about it, and I think we're going to try to do a podcast so we can explain for people that want to go take a deeper dive into this, why we did it, what we did, who we're hiring, what the process is, and I think that will explain a lot in more of a user-friendly, personal standpoint. But our objective, if you ask me in practical terms, I'd love to see a little meat market that adds value, or a deli, or a small little cafe, or something like that. What I don't want to see is a body shop, or I don't want to see a landscaper that has got Stower's mulch outside. That's what we would like to not have. That said, Jack, if we don't succeed with our initial target of users, then we will put it on the market, still try to protect from negative impact users, and maybe just put it to a passive user that doesn't impact the community negatively or positively. We may end up by default, if we can't get the market to receive this building and do something productive. That's a distinct possibility. I don't want anybody looking at me a year from now saying, what were you thinking? The question is, maybe I was. No, as a developer, it wouldn't make any sense, but as a township official to help protect the property values, it does make sense, and that's why we've kind of stepped in. Nobody in their right mind is going to walk into Madison Place, buy a site on Murray Avenue at that asking price, and just invest and hope for a player to be named later. It's going to take the community involvement, and as we've said, Sycamore Township's done it, Loveland's done it. Madeira, I go look at Choo Choo's down there in Madeira, right there on Miami Road, where they have a nice little meat market in there. They had a hot dog place in there. Other communities have done it.
Milford.
Springfield
Township bought a rundown or a vacant bowling
Sure, yes.
location that they needed to redevelop.
Yeah. So I think we've spent enough time on this, and then I'll let Melissa deliver more, and Dustin, you deliver more in your economic development report. But hopefully we give you general overall rationale of what we've done, whether we agree or disagree, but I've at least explained to you what our thinking was. That said, let's move on to anybody else in open forum?
Nope.
Okay, let's go on to the fiscal officer's report with Ms. Heaton.
Sorry. July is the beginning of the third quarter of our budget year. The general fund ending balance is $1,803,652, which is a decrease of 51% from June. Restricted fund ending balance is $6,854,012, which is an increase of 23% from June. Combined, these funds total $8,657,664, which is a decrease from June. And there was an accounting error that resulted.
Cost that.
Yeah. I don't know if that number jumped out at anybody, but yeah, it was an error. Sorry.
You hold the button down too long and it does a transfer twice.
So for the month of July, revenues were $3,255,449. Expenses were $3,829,173. Year-to-date revenues, $7,148,117. and year-to-date expenses, $7,005,108. Hamilton County's second half revenues settlement will occur early in August, and voter-approved levy revenues do not cover the cost of the township's public services. Business revenues cover more than 80% of the cost of public services in Columbia Township. And thanks to the township's success in attracting and supporting businesses, we are able to continue to provide our community with exceptional services at a lower cost.
Okay. Any questions about the fiscal officer's report?
Nope.
Okay. Any questions about the road superintendent's report?
No questions, just a couple of really quick comments. I love the new bike racks on Plainville Avenue. Those are awesome as that neighborhood starts to evolve.
Is that with the township?
Yes,
Money?
installed the two bike racks on Plainville out in front of
In our
the,
public right-of-way.
on the public right of way, in front of the insurance and the bar there too. So that's great. And then I'm really happy that Cambridge and Buckingham will be completely done this week, knock on wood.
Yes.
So that's fantastic. That's all.
Okay. That we move on to the administrator's report with Ms. Taylor.
We always start with a thank you to our staff. The Joel concert, All About Joel, our staff worked really hard, even with 50 West as a co-sponsor. Our staff works oftentimes a full week, a weekend, and then comes back to work Monday morning and starts the week all over again. So I wanted to say thank you to both administration and also Dustin's team who worked really hard on that.
I think it was our best event ever.
It was a phenomenal event. So I'm sure that you and your trustees' reports will want to talk about that. Under administration, a couple of items. We've had two biennial audits, the 2020 through 21 for Columbia Township and also the 2020-21 for the JEDZ. The auditor completed ours and there were no material findings. There were a few entries that had to be corrected, kind of the theme of today where you hit the wrong keystroke on the computer. So that was it was a great audit, great news. And then the auditor is finalizing the Columbia Fairfax JEDZ. Auditor has just finalized it and I just got the materials and haven't reviewed it yet. The 2023 budget, which is required annually by all townships to be submitted to the Hamilton County Budget Commission late summer. We reviewed at a public hearing and it is on the agenda today for board approval, and then we will submit that to Hamilton County. Under great things are happening in Columbia Township. Of our community events that were scheduled for the year, we are 5 down and 2 to go. The 5 being St. Patrick's Day, the Flying Pig Tailgate, the Margaritaville, plus the bonus of Taste of Columbia Township. We hosted a Neighbor Day at Deer Park Silverton Fire District, and the summer concert that we just mentioned for Billy Joel. We have 2 to go. Bengals Tailgate on Sunday, September the 25th. That will also be at 50 West. We do a couple of events with them each year in the summer, and then this will be the second one. And then our Luminaria, which is always the first Thursday of December. I won't go into a lot of detail about NET. I did last meeting, but we are very close to having materials out to the residents about what the plan is for their streets. And then also we are very close to, probably by the end of this week, having the bid package for all of the new street trees. So it's been 6 months of work on top of all of last year's planning and development for this. And we are going to have some big changes happening in the fall in the township with some of the neighborhoods seeing a new tree canopy go in. So
Can I add something really quick to
Yeah.
that? I think Jerry is now the most popular person from what I hear
He's a
in the
great
entire
guy.
township. I'm glad he doesn't live in the township because he could win any office that he wanted to.
He
He's
could bump a few
beloved
trustees.
in the township.
Yeah.
So he's doing a great job, and that's a great program.
He's very personable. He is a nationally certified. He holds multiple national certifications. He loves what a well-thought-out tree program can do for communities, for people's neighborhood values, and also was helpful in responding during some of the storms when there were trees that were damaged. And so, yes, he's a new beloved part of the township. Madison Place Firehouse Second Act. I've mentioned before about the project being delayed because of the shortages on materials as well as shortages in contractors. But good news, I had a meeting last week with one of the principals of MSP, the design firm, and we're working toward the bid package and hopefully can bid it this fall for construction early next year. And so we went ahead and started moving forward with that good news. Moving forward, we contracted with Beth Sillibarger, who is a regional historical consultant, does a lot of work with the city of Cincinnati and other communities, and is very knowledgeable and trusted by the state as well on a number of different matters. The firehouse I have shared before will have a cultural history element to it. We have reserved space for cultural experience rooms. And so Beth is out doing investigation and research and collection of materials, and also doing oral histories from people who multi-generational families had members who worked at the firehouse, as Trustee Hughes' brother was a firefighter there, as well as those who have memories of having special events in the firehouse. And so she is collecting all of those, and then they will be available, as well as photographs and other memorabilia will be available in these specific cultural rooms. So we've gone ahead and started working on that, and she's out talking to a lot of different people on that currently. Under the subject that was discussed earlier, Plainville Business District Revitalization, and I want Dustin to join us here in just a minute on this one as well. We acquired, as we've already stated, we acquired 2 properties in July as part of our comprehensive plan goals to revitalize our business districts. And without going into a lot of the previous detail that we've already covered, I did want to share that this is not the first time that the township has been involved in the acquisition or redevelopment of property. It predates me, although I have done it in other communities where I have worked before Columbia Township. But you may remember the vacant drug activity Kmart over in the Ridge Fire District. So Columbia Township was involved in the purchase and redevelopment of that Kmart into CBT, Cincinnati Belting Technology, several hundred employees, one of the top taxpayers in Columbia Township. So we, by the township's engagement in that deal, and also with the Greater Cincinnati Community Improvement Corporation, which is a economic development arm in terms of transactions, whereas Alloy, formerly Hamilton County Development Company, is our economic development partner for planning and coordination and outreach. We took a building similar to what the old IGA was on Plainville, but we were active in the Kmart where drug deals were going down, police calls were frequent, and turned it into one of the largest employers and largest investors in this township. So I know we have a lot smaller footprint to work with in the Plainville Business District, but this is not a precedent. This is not the first time that the township has been involved in acquiring property or being involved in the acquisition of property for redevelopment. So, and that was done through a TIF. I wanted to explain just very briefly that we did go through a process of complete due diligence, and the Cambridge property did not languish, I think was implied, for months on the market. And I, as the township administrator, have authority to put properties, enter into contracts subject to trustee approval. So as soon as that property came on the market, within a week or so, I had put that property under contract. So the resulting 30 plus days, we performed due diligence. And so we did full appraisals, full title search, full survey, and also full environmental, including in the buildings, on the grounds and below ground subsurface. So the appraisals, to answer a previous question, for both properties combined, the appraisals showed that the value of the properties was $50,000 greater than what we purchased the properties for together collectively. And then also, the property purchase was originally slated to be on the July 12th agenda. All of the due diligence commitments were supposed to be back the week before that, and the environmental was delayed. So we had a commitment for a closing with the owner, and because the environmental was so crucial, because of the history of Plainville, it was very important. So I pulled a lot of this is done at the administrative level, not at the township trustee level. I pulled it from the July 12th. We went instead into executive session and had a discussion about that. And then when we had the environmentals, we had 5 days or whatever, 10 days, I forget what it was, to close. And that is when we had the special meeting, and we had several other items on that meeting as well. And so the other answer really quickly is that the Hamilton County value does tax collection not based on the owner but based on the use. And those properties still have a tenant, specifically in the Murray one, into 2023 while we engage the services of Dustin and then another firm. Do you have anything that you want to, separate from your general economic development report, do you have anything? I mean, one of our first phone calls was to Alloy, and then Dustin also brought in the vice president of Alloy, Catherine Fitzgerald, who is involved in redevelopment in Uptown and other communities. So a really big power player there, understands how you go from where Uptown used to be blighted and in decline, and you start to bring in investors through catalytic development, which is what we're doing when we're buying properties. And you see now what has happened in Uptown with that turnaround, and that's what we're aiming to do here as well. Do you want the microphone for anything, or do you want to wait until you do your quarterly report?
If you don't, do you have much to add? I mean, because I can. Okay.
So we're going to go into your economic development report now. Are you done, Melissa?
Yeah, we can do that. I just have a few items on the road report, and we touched on that earlier, so let's go ahead and shift gears.
Okay, so we're going to go into Dustin Montgomery's economic development quarterly report. But before we go, do we have any questions about the administrator's report from Ms. Taylor? If anybody got anything to add, then we'll go into the economic
Move stuff
development
for
quarter report. Sorry if these things are dovetailing into each other, but
Sure.
we just want
Flowing.
to. Yeah.
Well, so, as Alloy is, your economic development partner, and I think what's exciting about the opportunity in Madison Place is that the township is now involved. We don't get to work with very many communities directly that have been able to accomplish what Columbia Township has accomplished in creating additional revenue sources to do redevelopment work, like the JED-Z, like TIFs being put into place to capture the increase in property redevelopment. So it's exciting to see the township trustees and the township being proactive of putting these revenue sources in place to be able to be forward thinking. What's exciting here is that everything you've done to this point aligns with your comprehensive plan, which was passed by the community. It calls for redevelopment. It calls for proactively putting a focus on Madison Place. It's one of the 3 business districts in your community, and it's one of the 3 focus areas of the comprehensive plan. And in the comprehensive plan, although it was mentioned earlier, the uses are to be determined, but we are seeking a highest and best use that would benefit the community. Additional parking is highlighted as a need in the comprehensive plan. So if one of the back properties on Cambridge were to become public parking, it is very much in line with a plan that's already been in place for a number of years. So I think that is all good news, and was mentioned earlier with the broker, having a commercial professional broker involved, we're going to get quality opportunities and passes at these spaces, and there will be an opportunity to make sure that it is a best fit for the community, best fit for the building. So again, I think it's exciting. Alloy is certainly really excited to be involved in this process. We're excited to partner with the brokerage community to market the site and to just continue the momentum of what is happening in other parts of the township with redevelopment, which segues probably well into my quarterly report.
And the only other comment I want to make is a compliment to you, is you were the one that suggested bringing in the brokerage firm and bringing it in, and it turned into a huge win. I was surprised they would take the listing on such a small building, just because they can't really, it's not a big moneymaker for them, but thankfully we had that young lady that lived in the community that had the passion to think, I'd like to go do this and
Sure.
make the community better. So that was a good use of you as an economic development tool to bring them in. So
Absolutely.
very,
And-
very, very profitable meeting.
And one final point is, we see this all across the county. The only real way a community can assure quality redevelopment is when a community controls its own destiny by controlling the properties. Properties that are not readily accessible, immediately off of 71, 75, do not see the demand that properties like this in small business districts have across all our country. You have to, a township, a community, municipality has to be proactive in order to, and kind of push the market along, if you will, to make things happen that will be a benefit to the community. So again, we're excited. The thing, I don't want to read the whole report. I just will highlight a couple of things here. Again, positive momentum in the other parts of the township, the Ridge and Highland area. We mentioned this last quarter, but Ridgewater Plaza was purchased, and the new owners are going to, they plan to do some improvements to the property. They'd like to clean up the signage, so they're really hoping to be a real good participant in the community, with partnering with the township to make good things happen there. I will also point out that since our last quarterly report on Wooster Pike, a new coffee shop has opened up, Big B Coffee, which I think, new coffee shop, new bakery, Wooster Pike, with all the exciting things that is happening there. Just again, a lot of positive momentum. Those are really the two biggest things I wanted to call out. And if there are any questions of me, I'm happy to stick around to answer those.
The only other comment I would make is, I don't know if you want to describe this or you want me to, but we looked at the property down in Wooster Pike that I referenced earlier, but that's now been purchased by Chipwood from Tire Discounters. And again, our position on that was, originally we were looking at it to protect the future use, but when Chipwood approached us and said he'd like to buy it and maybe use it for some public parking and for the nonprofit he has behind it for additional parking, there's potential that could alleviate some of the parking issues in the future for some of the bike trail and/or 50 West participants, but that's not definitive yet. But we looked at it and thought, well, if we have a stakeholder that's profitable in the community, even if it's a tire store, it's a successful, clean, mega operation, we're not going to go into a position of going in, bidding against them, competing for it in that particular case. So that the only reason why I'm addressing this is because people have asked me, what's going on here? And a few people in my neighborhood have reached out. So
But once again, the township was proactive in
Yes.
securing additional outside funds.
Right.
And should the township have been successful in securing the site, there was a state grant of $150.
150 grand.
$150,000, thank you. That would have been in play to help facilitate that acquisition.
Correct. So I only said this because people have asked this, so it's going to be fairly innocuous is what it's going to be, but it's going to help a current tenant succeed, which is the Tire Discounters and their nonprofit behind it, and hopefully benefit some of the other parking issues on the Wooster Pike businesses. All right, any questions about Dustin's Economic Development Report?
We appreciate you so much.
Yes.
You work very hard on our behalf and bring
He's
a lot
on
of
it.
resources to us that we otherwise would not have as a small community. I mean, you basically bring us the region, and then sometimes you do research nationally for us, and you have a lot of relationships, and we really appreciate it.
Dustin's on it. A very, very, very good partnership we have there. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That, we move on to the police report. Lieutenant Neighbor.
Good evening, everybody. I have just a few minor things that I wanted to bring up. The Drug Enforcement Administration is going to be doing their drug take-back program again. It's going to be scheduled for October the 29th from 10 to 2. We'll be having hosting that at our District 4 substation in Silverton. More to come with that. I'll be pushing the information back out to the township so they can pass that out to the community. Some of you may have heard in the community that Good Shepherd has had a large presence of officers at the Montessori recently. We did a threat assessment of the school as part of the pretty much the national police knee-jerk reaction to the Texas incident. We were trying to up the ante for the protection of our children in our communities. So the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office has gone through all the schools in the areas that we patrol, done threat assessments to try to beef up the security for all the schools. And as a part of that, and part of the reason for that as well, there's the state of Ohio has the House Bill 101 where there is money available through grant application to be used to improve the securities of schools, in particular for kids, schools that are K through 12 schools. So, if you've heard about it and wondered about it, or maybe it gets talked about among parents through the community, that's part of the reason why we're doing that. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is just something that came up in the last month and a half or so. I started seeing a couple more reports of elderly people trying to be, not so much in general, fraud. People are trying to make phone calls to say that they're from this organization or that organization, or you can win money, or all different types of frauds. But it all kind of stems around the end result is you need to go buy gift cards and try to give us the gift card numbers and the security codes for those gift cards. So just a word out to the community, if anybody ever tells you to go buy a gift card and you're going to receive this, it is a fraud, period, end of discussion. So just a reminder to the community about something like that. And that's all I have for our police report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I would love if you would address the commendation. I think it's an interesting one, and I'm really proud of Mr. Parton.
Mr. Parton, the commendation, and I'm trying to remember the address that was.
It was at 3272 Highland Avenue.
Yeah, 32. Okay. So what happened was there was a stylist shop where a mirror broke, and somehow a woman partially severed her leg off. It was a very bad cut to her leg, and Officer Parton was the first Corporal Doug Parton was the first officer that responded, and he was it June 9th?
June 16th. You're doing well, but sorry for putting you on the spot.
That's all right. I meant to bring that down with me, and I forgot to.
That's all right.
So June 16th, the mirror breaks. He responds. He immediately applies a tourniquet and pressure to the wound to this woman's leg, and in short, either saved her leg or saved her life or saved both.
Wow.
So once the EMTs arrived, they finished up with the advanced life saving technique, and saved the woman's leg. So we decided to give him a departmental commendation for that. So that's the whole story in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Good news.
Yeah,
Nice
thank
and
you.
Positive news, so good stuff. Okay, with that we move on to the Little Miami Joint Fire and Rescue District report with Mr. Lamar, and Chief Sifke's in the audience too, so we'll let him add to it if he needs to, but I'll start with you, Mr. Lamar.
I don't think he needs to. I want to mention this as a representative of the Little Miami Joint Fire and Rescue District Board, which is separate from this board. I wanted to notify the community that is in that district that there will be a levy on the ballot. That's November 8th. So primarily if you live in Madison Place and Williams Meadow,
Columbia G,
if you know your voting precinct, there will be a levy on the ballot. It is only 1.75 mils, and I'm going to tell you about it, and you can probably ask about any of us for more details, but it is 1.75 mils, which is annual revenue of $287,000. And annual cost to homeowner per $100,000 market value is $61.25. We heard from Chief Sifke, I think that was 2 months ago, about the need for that, and the voters will ultimately decide. And so if you'd like more information, you could probably reach out to any of us in the next few months before you vote. And I think that's all.
Chief Sifke,
Chief,
you
do
want
you
to
have
say
anything?
hello, or do you have anything to add?
All I gotta say is, my wife and I attended the All About Billy Joel event, and it was a great time. It was, the weather was great, the venue was great, so we really enjoyed it, and I appreciate the extension to us to attend. So
Thank you for coming.
Thank
Yeah, always good to see you there.
You will be seeing more of Chief Sifke out spreading the word on how to pass this levy too. So, and I will at least be the master of ceremonies to at least help introduce you and let you tell your story. Okay, that we move on to trustee reports. Do we have anything to report? We'll start with the quiet one, Susan Hughes, if you have anything to report.
I attended the fire
Neighbor Day.
with Brian, and it was a very hot day. We got to squirt the hose and put a fake fire out, and biggest ice cream truck I ever saw in my life. And they had free ice cream, and some lady came with her grandchildren and spent the day. I mean, it was a good time. And we got a free smoke alarm, which was very nice. So I hope we saved some lives with that.
It is nice to see that, because inevitably people say, well, the only time we ever hear from us or you or whatever is when they're up for election or there's a levy. So it's nice to see that outreach. I think it's very important for the community. Ryan, you have anything to add?
I was going to mention the same thing in that much appreciation to Chief Meter and his team helping us put on such a great event. It was great. And my favorite part was absolutely when Ms. Hughes has this unique ability to somehow make a party better. And I noticed she did this at the Elton John about a year ago. You were the first person to go out and dance when the Elton John concert happened last summer.
I didn't see that.
And
I didn't see that.
you have this unique ability. And this time, it was a good time, and then you said, let's go shoot that fire hose. And you were the first one to do it, and then all of a sudden, by the time Susan's done shooting the fire hose, there's a line about 15 people deep, and went on for another hour and a half of people shooting the fire hose. So it was a great time.
One little man was in a wheelchair, and he
Yeah.
got a real blast out of holding that hose. And it was more fun for me to watch him
Yeah,
than me.
absolutely. So that's all.
Thank you. I did not attend. I was out of town, so I appreciate you guys' support and effort of that, and thank you to the fire departments and everybody else. So it is a good way for people to have a better understanding what the fire departments go through. So all good stuff. All right, that we move on to communications. Any questions about communications?
I have
or
one
anything
thing
to
I
add?
want to share on the subject of the township being involved in catalytic development, redevelopment. So the Cincinnati Business Courier does an annual multiple-page spread about the region's 100 largest privately owned companies. And in the top 50, lo and behold, we mentioned earlier in this meeting, CBT, Cincinnati Belting Technology. And then when they listed every business by number, largest TQL Logistics all the way down, they listed the city where they're located. So you run down this long list and you immediately you're seeing downtown Cincinnati, Cincinnati, Westchester, sounds familiar, Blue Ash, Columbia Township, CBT. So that's what happens when we get involved in properties.
Good.
No pressure.
No pressure.
And the other thing I would add to the trustees report is I've gotten a lot of personal feedback and thank yous and emails and stuff from people of the event. And thank you to the staff, Chandra, Melissa, Lauren, Kim, Dustin and his crew, everybody, and all the trustees that were involved.
Rob French.
Yes.
Everybody did a great job, and it was one heck of an event, well attended, well respected, and it was fun to see, the president of the trustees of Sycamore and Union Township come, and we had the former president of the Hamilton County Commission, Denise Treehouse, came as well. I just think it raises the bar and the respect level of Columbia Township in general, in addition just to being a great event, walkable event for so many parts of our neighborhood. So I think we should be really proud we've quite raised the bar in those events. And the weather doesn't hurt either. So that always is a key. Okay, we move on to making motions and things like that, and that's where I hand it over to Melissa. When she messes up, I correct her, but not very often. So you go, Melissa.
So because we moved the meeting, we only have ESP Media for a short time, so I'm going to move really quickly
You go.
through these. So the first motion is to accept the 2023, my apologies, the 2023 Hamilton County Auditor's Tax Budget for Columbia Township. We had a public hearing on the tax budget, and the tax budget is in all of your packets and also is made available through an advance public notice for anyone who requested a copy. And so I would like, if there are no questions, that the board could approve the motion.
I make a motion, we approve the budget. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
On the subject of the township leveraging dollars outside of residential real property taxes, the Sunnyside Medical Marijuana Dispensary on Kennedy is proposing to double its space, and the state law requires local jurisdictions to authorize not only the initial location of a medical marijuana dispensary, which we did by resolution, but also any additional changes to their store. So I've provided a letter that will go to Hamilton County on behalf of the Board of Trustees authorizing the medical marijuana dispensary expansion. And so I would need to answer any questions you may have, and if none, a motion to authorize the expansion, and then we'll have a letter that I would ask that each of you sign before you leave. I have to actually send it to the county right away.
I make a motion, we approve. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Let's move on to resolution.
Resolution 20, the first resolution is a one reading. This actually came up earlier too. When we do the budget in July or August of the prior year that we start the budget, we do not know when expenses will occur that were not anticipated. So the state has a process through the counties that we pass new expenditures by supplemental appropriation. So anything that is not on the supplemental appropriation at the beginning of the year, that is not on the appropriation budget, we pass. So for example, I have one of those in front of us. We were talking about Jerry earlier. He has completed his phase 1 work, and now we're moving into phase 2, and so I need additional funds authorized for him. So I'm going to read this, and then we will pass that as one reading. To supplement Resolution 2157, the 2022 Columbia Township Annual Appropriation and Supplemental Appropriations 2213, 2218, 2219, 2227, 2236, and 2239. I've read the title of the resolution. May I have a motion and a second to
I
pass?
make a motion, we approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. The next resolution is an emergency. We pass emergency resolutions whenever there is a public safety need, whenever there is a road bid or anything that is timely or under contract. This resolution is to authorize, as part of the NED program, the large trees that are damaged or diseased that Jerry the arborist has identified through his comprehensive township inventory of street trees. Our crews removed the small trees. However, for safety purposes, we don't have the equipment nor the training to do large trees. So in this resolution, I am asking you to authorize. We requested proposals from a number of different companies, and Shawnee Tree came back with the lowest, $12,342. So I'll read the resolution. authorizing the administrator to enter into a contract with Shawnee Tree Company to remove diseased and damaged street trees as part of NED, the Neighborhood Economic Development Program, dispensing with the second reading and declaring an emergency. Are there any questions?
I have a question. These are trees only in the public right-of-way?
Correct. We don't have authority to go on private
Okay,
property.
just wanna make sure that's
Street trees
known.
is the public street tree right of way.
And this is in lots of different neighborhoods.
It is in the first phase of the neighborhoods for
Yeah.
NED. Because of the scale of the program, it's a 2-year program, and because of the cost, because the trustees committed the full first year revenues from the medical marijuana dispensaries, which were $500,000, to the NED program, and because of the scale of the program, we're rolling it out over 2 years.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
I make a motion, we approve. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
So this is an emergency resolution, so I need a motion and a second to dispense with the second reading as well.
So moved, second. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
And I need a motion and a second to invoke the
So
emergency
moved. Do I hear a
clause.
second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
I love this kind of stuff.
The next emergency resolution, because it involves a contract that's timely and a road project that's timely. I've already gone into a lot of detail about, over the past months, about that we are working with Hamilton County Engineer's Office to improve Walton Creek Road at US 50. This authorizes me, now that we have grant funding in place, to enter into a contract to construct the project in partnership with the Hamilton County Engineer. Title is authorizing the administrator to enter into an agreement with the Hamilton County Engineer to improve Walton Creek Road, dispensing with the second reading and declaring an emergency. You've heard the first reading. May I have a motion and a second
I
to
make a motion
dispense
to
with
approve.
the
Do I hear a
second
second?
reading?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
We've dispensed the second reading. May I have a motion and a second to pass the
So
resolution?
moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
May I have a motion and a second to invoke the
So
emergency clause?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
That was slow. Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
And the grand finale, thank you. We have a first reading only, authorizing the administrator to sign necessary agreements for annual commercial property and liability insurance, pay the annual premium, and dispensing with the second reading. Our property liability insurance is through Ohio Plan, which many public entities use. It is administered by Highland. It comes up for renewal this time of year. It is for property and for liability, and the premium this year is $23,444. And this is a first reading only. Do you have any questions? Okay, I'll bring it back to you for approval at the next meeting.
So no motions.
My work here is done.
Okay, good. All right, I make a motion to approve the payment of bills, bank reconciliation, and financial reports. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
And I make a motion to sign of the minutes and resolutions. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
I make a motion, we adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Yes. Oh.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Mr. Kubicki? Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Don't
We-
leave without signing.
we gotta
Okay, I'll
sign that
rush that because
letter.
I know you guys got other places to go.
I always defer to Miss Hughes.